Holy cow! This is a much bigger screening than we could ever imagine having in the UK. So thank you guys for coming.
It is possible this is just a dream. It's worth considering that. So I first saw that show. I'm a big fan of Mike. I want to make sure I get the pronunciation right. It's Mike, right?
I say Mike, yeah. That's how I say it, but it's really up to anyone's interpretation.
So I saw, has anyone seen, I don't know how aware people are of your stand-up, but I saw that as a live show 4 years ago in Montreal, and it was an hour-long, heartbreaking. I mean, I think you may have made the worst date movie there's ever been.
Yeah. From this movie, we've created more breakups and divorces than almost any movie in history.
We're actually just going to create some awkward drives home this evening as people assess their relationship and now shift uncomfortably as I've mentioned it. I made it worse.
But just remember that if that's the case, that's for the best.
Now, the opening of the movie, that breaking the fourth wall and saying this is true, this is a 100% true story.
Yeah.
Just to be annoying, it is, right?
Yeah, you know what I always say? The things that are you would not imagine are true, like jumping through the window and the breakup and all like the major things, and then the things that you don't really care about, the sort of insignificant, smaller minutia, is a lot of it's convenient for movie making and storytelling.
So the Hooters waitress, her boobs were entirely equal sizes.
Yeah, they were exactly the same size. Yeah, that was embellished.
Awesome.
No, that was true. That was true as well. That was actually,
so, because
that was a very hard scene for me to watch. Actually, I'm here with my wife. I'm married to someone who is not pictured in the film, but my wife Jenny is here, who I'm deeply in love with, and we're really enjoying our trip to London. We love your city. We came last year. I was at the Soho Theatre doing my next show after this one, which is called My Girlfriend's Boyfriend. We did 2 weeks there, and I'm adapting that into my next film right now. But that's how.
So there is a happy ending, but you have to wait.
Yeah.
The detail of the movie as well, the other stuff that's true, the sleeping in a sleeping bag and having to gaffer tape yourself shut. That's true.
Never described it that way, but yeah, the gaffer tape myself shut. That's what it is. That's true. Yeah, I sleep in a sleeping bag. People always say, is that a cumbersome thing? And it is, except I have like a summer sleeping sack.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
That's sort of thin, and it's not a big deal. My wife always says it's time to go in your pod.
It's a nice thing because I love this, and I'm looking forward to the next movie. But if it doesn't work out and you end up homeless, I think. The transition's going to be super easy for you.
Right, because I already have the sleeping bag.
You got the sleeping bag. I don't think you need a room. I think you'll be okay.
All I need is the stick to hold the sleeping bag on.
So the transition...
Is that a hobo cliche here? I'm not sure.
I'm really interested in the transition. Obviously, as a stand-up, I do stand-up, and the idea...
Oh, do you do stand-up? I wasn't familiar with your work before tonight.
Sure. The idea of for me, what the whole movie is about is getting your act together. It's like you start off with this, like, trying to be a stand-up, and then you find this voice through just being incredibly honest, and that's what I kind of love about your live shows. It's just they're so brutally honest. I could see you squirming as you watch the movie, because it's all...
Yeah, I was. It's funny, because it's so... I don't watch the movie that often, but in this instance, because the screen is so beautiful, and, we're here in London, I was like, I have to watch it again, but it's really painful to watch, because these are... sometimes reviewers will say, like, in general, reviewers have been friendly to the movie, but sometimes they'll be like, I don't like this guy. And I'm like, yeah, you're not supposed to. Like, you're,
I thought that was the key. There's a couple of key lines in the movie for me, and they were all things which broke the fourth wall. That line where you're just filling up with petrol, and you turn to the camera and go, remember you're on my side.
Yeah.
It's such a kind of pivotal line to the film, because you're not showing yourself in a sympathetic light.
No, and that's the goal with both of my one-man shows and with the movie is to really kind of split the audience in half, and so people aren't sure how to feel about the protagonist.
The other line that I loved was when the fourth wall again is broken, and you say, "I know, I'm in the future also."
I'm in the future also, yeah.
Which is, I don't want to ruin the next movie, but it works out wonderfully. There's marriage. Yeah, are there questions from people? Has anyone got any specific?
Oh yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, does anyone have a question? We have microphones for you, so we can hear your questions.
There's a guy in a hoodie. Oh, could be a girl.
Here,
The lighting's not great.
Oh, okay.
What are you thinking of?
I noticed that you had 3 co-writers work on the screenplay.
Yeah.
Considering it's such a personal film for you, how do you get together with them, and how do you develop the film with them?
Joe Birbiglia, no relation, right?
No, I met Joe at a
Kindergarten.
well, it was a Knights of Columbus meeting in my town, and I said, "Oh, are you Italian as well? What's your last name?" And he said Birbiglia, and we just hit it off from there. But no, Birbiglia, that's my brother Joe, who co-writes quite a bit with me, and then I'm glad that's when it got the laugh. All of that pipe being laid until. And then Ira Glass, of course, the host and producer of This American Life, which is a radio show in America and a podcast here. So you'll never hear it, but but it's a wonderful, brilliant show that you might be familiar with. And then Seth Barish, who co-directed the film with me, who directed my one-person shows. And it is a very personal film. It's a good question. It's an odd thing to have 4 screenwriters on a film that is so specific and personal, but it was one of these things where to get it from being a one-person show to being a narrative feature with all these other characters, we spent so much time on it. We spent probably 2 or 3 years on the script, and it was one of these things where it was real labor of love, where no one wanted to finance the movie, like no one. You might hear the story at these other Sundance events from other filmmakers, and thank God that Sundance exists and supports these kinds of movies, because there's no, I just saw this great movie a few minutes ago here called...
well, don't go on about it. Yeah, it was good.
It was a few minutes before that.
It's really crazily big-headed.
There's this movie called Kings of Summer that was earlier today, and the director Jordan said a really interesting thing. He goes, my film was a hard film to finance because studios see audiences in terms of quadrants. There's like young men, young women, old men, old women, and he's like, if you don't fit into one of those demographics in terms of who your customers are, then you can't really get a movie off the ground. And that was definitely the case with this movie. Like no one wanted to finance the movie, and then there was this company called Bedrocket that was interested in doing a lot of things in comedy. They have a YouTube channel, official comedy on YouTube, and they were game to finance, and we made it for one of our producers, Jacob Jaffe, is in the audience tonight, and I was actually, you can give him a round of applause. Maybe stand up, Jacob, right there. The best seat in the house. He hasn't seen the movie enough times, but I was marveling during this movie tonight, thinking just how well produced the film is, and how, if it weren't for Jacob's depth of experience, so much of what's there would not be there.
And it looks like a proper piece of cinema, as opposed to, I think sometimes when it's a one-man show that becomes a movie, it feels very stagey.
Thanks.
It didn't feel like a stagey thing to me. I don't know how the audience felt. Let's not put it to a poll. But to me, it felt like it. I mean, I know it's been written a lot. When it's reviewed, people often make the comparison between Woody Allen and yourself. And I think the idea of making it's a movie that's incredibly personal and funny, and it feels like one of the early ones. It feels like kind of an interesting love story, and it's a movie for grown-ups, and there's so little in the multiplexes for grown-ups. There's so much of it is aimed at that kind of teen market, and that's a slightly more complex date movie. I mean, kidding about the worst date movie, but the idea that it's about what love is.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a lot to take in, but I really appreciate it, and that was the goal. We wanted to make something that people could laugh at, and along the way, maybe feel something. And that was what, that's what, of course, those the Woody Allen movies I really love, like Annie Hall and Hannah and Her Sisters, and all those, like and like the James L. Brooks movies that are really inspiring to me, like Broadcast News in terms of endearment, where they just ride that line where you're not sure quite what to feel from it. You just feel like you're witnessing someone's story being told.
Sure, and the other thing of people in the movie that feel funny in a very organic way.
Yeah, that was I really enjoyed the actress Sandra James, who plays my agent, is eating the popcorn out of the headshot cone, the actor's photo made into a cone. I really enjoyed, but and then also Wyatt Cenac, who you might know from The Daily Show, he plays one of the other comedians. Kristen Schaal is a cameo. Yeah, Mark Maron is another comedian who I really like, who does a cameo. And we were really lucky with we called in a lot of favors.
Sure, of course. What other questions have we got? Someone has their hand up at the back. Go. I'm liking the fact we've got mics being run to people. Just shout, you'll be all right. He said.
And just take a photo. If you want, by the way, just take photos with your camera of this and put it. And you can tweet it or
I recorded the whole movie.
Oh yeah, no.
I'm going to say, actually, the movie is available on. That's an interesting thing about, from a sort of cinema point of view. We'll get to your question. The idea that the movie is available on iTunes in the UK. So it's
yeah,
release.
as of today, it is the official release of the movie. Because no one wanted to distribute the film here.
It wasn't released, it escaped.
It was escaped, yes. The film has escaped. No, it's funny because you and I, when I was here last May, I said, I don't know what we're going to do in Britain because I don't think any movie distribution company wants to put it out. And I said to you, I go, can we just show it at your place for our friends? Because I want a few of our friends to see it. And you actually said, you were like, you should just put it out for $5 on the internet, and people will find it. And if people tweet about it, and if you put it on Facebook, it'll get around. And so that's actually what I did. And so you guys are a part of that right now. You are the marketing department for the film.
I think it's the best idea because it's the marketing for your next movie is that movie. If people see that movie, I think they'll want to know what happens, and it's you. It's only obviously when you make 2 or 3 of these, then you're going to run out of story. And you're actually going to have to write something that didn't happen.
At some point, I'm going to have to write that. Yeah.
Damn it.
I'm going to have to write my Cocoon.
Oh, sorry, there was a question over there, and we started chatting again. Sorry.
I really loved the movie.
Oh, thanks.
There was a line in it where a comedian said that all comedians are sick, and I thought that was a really interesting idea. And this is maybe a question to you both: is that how you feel? I do.
Because you do.
No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Sounds like you've been hurt by a comedian. I certainly think there's something. I remember when I started doing comedy, a guy saying to me, that was the best quote about comedy. He said, a comedian is, in a room of 500 people, it's the one person facing the wrong way. And I think there's something in that. I think it really kind of sums us up as we're not quite fitting in. Yeah, I definitely think it's a.
Yeah, and I think it's I don't know if it's sick per se, although sometimes sure. And if you have any open mics here, where you see comedians who have not been on stage many times, you see a lot of people who you're really not sure whether it's mental illness or comedy. But
it's exactly the case. I mean, I think that's the opening 20 minutes of the movie. I think that portrayal of what it's like to be starting out in comedy is so accurate, emotionally so true to what it's like in this country as well. If you go to Edinburgh Festival, that idea of going, yeah, I'll definitely drive. I remember driving to Plymouth for £50 to do 5 minutes, just like a crazy man.
Yeah, all of that stuff in the movie is completely true. They're like driving hundreds and hundreds of miles for little or no money or negative amounts of money is all accurate. And I really do believe there is a bit, to answer your question, there is a bit of delusion that goes into being a comedian. You do have to convince yourself it's going well, when it's not going well, which is hard to say to a group of people who are aspiring comedians, who are, some of them, they're just never going to be good. And so you're saying the same advice to people who are good.
This is a terrible way to hear.
Yeah, I've been telling Jimmy for a few years. Just stop it. Yeah. But yeah, no, I find comedians just to be people who are comfortable wallowing in pain. I really do. I find it's people who are like, yeah, we can laugh about that.
It's an interesting transition you've made from, doing club comedy in New York and traveling around to doing one-man shows, which is unusual in America. It's not like the kind of Edinburgh thing we have here of people doing one-man shows, to actually making a movie, because it's almost like the old Peter Cook line. Do you know that line? He was at a cocktail party in the 60s and someone was chatting to someone and they said, "I'm writing a book." And he said, "Neither am I." And I think that applies directly to movies and stand-up comedians. I've met so many comedians that are currently, I'm working on a thing at the moment, and then you hear nothing ever. To get it to that stage from a one-man show, I'm really interested in that process and how you're doing that with the next one, because I don't know if anyone came to see Mike in Soho last year, but the next show is fantastic.
Oh, thanks. It's there was one person I think who applauded and said a couple. There's 4 or 5 people. Yeah, it's funny
to get
because
funding from them.
I actually wanted. Oh, and there's people up in the balcony. Hello, you guys. Nice to see you as well. I've been talking to these people the whole time, and now
This is very self-indulgent.
sorry that I just realized you exist. I got the finger from somebody. Well, hello. I always, it's strange, when I was in university in America, I was a screenwriting major, it was what I wanted to do, is I wanted to make films. And my professor said you should go out and make some short films. And so I did, and they were such colossal failures. And the thing about stand-up is you can try stand-up and fail, and it doesn't cost you much other than your dignity. But if you try and make films and you fail, you owe someone $5,000 or $10,000. I mean, there's thousands of dollars that this is a humble-sized film, and it cost $1 million to make. And this is an 80th of what a film, like this in the studio system would be budgeted at. So it's like, I remember when I was in college, I wrote a short film called Waiting to Be Great, and I budgeted it at, I think, $4,000, and I wrote a letter to all of my friends and my family and my family's friends, and it was basically like, I'm making my short film, and it's my opus, and it's going to be everything, and I was completely delusional about how great this movie was going to be. And it was about, it's funny because it was long before Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant did it very well. It was about professional extras. And it was, and anyway, I wrote letters to my families and to my family, and I said, if it was like public radio where you pledge, like if you give $10, you get a ticket to the movie, and if you get it for $50, you get a DVD, and for $100, you get a mug, and I raised about $4,000, and then I couldn't. I mean, it's so embarrassing to me. I like shrivel when I think about it. I didn't finish the movie. Like, we ran out of money in the edit, and at a certain point, we had this professional editor who just wouldn't call us back. And
That's
he
not very
had the
professional.
No, it's not professional at all. That was his least professional quality, was his call returning skills. But no, he was kind of doing it for cinema. He was protecting the world from our movie, and it was just terrible. And our movie was stolen by the editor, which is so strange. And it was so embarrassing because I'd see my family and people who had given $50 or $100 at Thanksgiving or Christmas, and they would go, "Hey, where's the movie? Where's my mug?" It's coming. On its way. And then what happened was that over the years I became, enough of a comedian that people wanted to do comedy specials with me, and so I would say, well, what you could do is, instead of a comedy special, I have this movie script. But it took years. I mean, I tried to start making movies when I was 19, and it took me till, I'm 34 now to make my first movie.
It's interesting, the idea that it was road tested though before, the confidence that you had going in, because you knew some of the jokes are very subtle in the movie, but I know that, because I've seen the live show, that they work with an audience, and the idea that you could be very confident going in to go, no, that's it, that's the script, that's going to work, because I've done it live. You've told that story.
Well, what's really crazy is that some of the jokes that work in the one-man show, when we finished the movie, were bombing in front of audiences. We would show them to friends, and it would just be nothing. And so what we did was the monologues, you know how I talked to the camera at the beginning of the movie? And we just saw the same movie, right? We just watched the same movie. So you know how I talked to the camera from the car? Well, originally, those were embedded in the scene. So in other words, I'd be having dinner with my parents in the movie, Carol Kane and James Rebhorn and Lauren Ambrose, and I would look at the camera and I'd say, well, you can see why I'm concerned about explaining this to my parents, and then I would go back to the dinner. And what we found was that was not, it was kind of like Ferris Bueller, within the scenes, that was not working at all. And the reason we theorized that it wasn't working was that people were just viewing the film as tragedy because they felt so bad for this character. And so we were like, well, why don't we just take it away, and we'll shoot in a car, and I'll tell the story as though it's in the past. So in other words, it's like, well, I had this thing happen to me, I'm going to tell you the story, and here's what happened, and then this happened, and then like you were saying before, like, I know I'm in the future also. And so the audiences started laughing because they were like, oh, he's okay. He's alive. He's driving.
I'm not sure whether, if the problem is people are perceiving it as a tragedy, setting it in a toll booth makes it better. I don't think people associate it with joy. It does work though. It's that thing of you go, oh, this guy's okay. I think having seen the other shows, I think it is kind of the first in a sequence.
Yeah, it's funny because Jimmy and I talk about this sometimes. Jimmy's always encouraging me to make the next film. First of all, you encouraged me to make it right away. When you saw this, you were like, you have to make the next one right away, which I'm gunning away at, and I'm trying to get done. And
if you give $50, you get a mug.
You can donate today on the way out. But you think that also I should talk to the camera in the second film, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I really like that. I feel like it's like seeing a stand-up show. You feel so emotionally attached to you from the beginning of the movie, and otherwise it's very difficult to tell that story. I think. We've got other questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one from the front. You could probably just say.
Maybe I'll bring this over to you, like Phil Donahue. I'm gonna wait here while you tell your.
Should I say? Yeah. So you talked about your background in screenwriting. So awkward.
I think it's most awkward for Mike now. We both have microphones, and he's just stood there, so we're good. I feel like we won something.
Photographer right here.
I feel now would be the ideal time to ask that question.
So you talked about your background in screenwriting and also stand-up comedy, and I was wondering how public radio and This American Life's involvement fits into all of that, and how Ira Glass got involved and how they helped produce it.
Thank you very much for your question.
You take this one.
Yeah, well, when I started out as a stand-up, I moved to New York as a stand-up in 2000, and I was mostly just doing jokes and maybe snippets of stories, and then there's two things I started doing. One is the Moth, which is a podcast that's great as well if you have a chance to listen to that, where it's just all personal stories told live in front of an audience. And then I started, eventually from that, I met Ira Glass, and he broadcast the story from this on his show. And then we started working on a bunch of stuff together. And I just started working in kind of larger, longer form things, and I started working on the one-man show to this, and I worked on the one-man show for this for probably about, I don't know, Jenny, my wife, probably knows a little better than I do, probably like 6 years. Yeah, probably about 6 years I worked on the show. It was funny because it was right, I started working on the show right when I met Jenny and we were dating, and I was like, hey, do you want to, this is how dumb I was. I was like, hey, do you want to come see this one-man show I just made? And it's like, yes. It's like the worst advertisement for myself ever. And, no, but she really liked it, and she was like a huge support through all of this, and through the whole process of mounting it as a one-man show in New York, and then making it into a movie.
Good question.
Oh, you got a question.
Shall I do the honors with the mic this time?
Yeah, please.
Actually, I have a mic if I could jump in.
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Hi.
Oh, wow.
Thanks.
He has hijacked the Q&A. He brought his own microphone.
I mean, you've got to admire, this is going to be a fantastic question, I would imagine, with this guy.
How did he get on our frequency?
I don't want to set expectations too high. But one, big fan, just to piggyback on the question below, my wife would hate me if I didn't ask you to say hi to Ira Glass for her.
Oh,
She's
of
a big-
course,
she's
yeah.
a big
No, that's
fan.
the first thing I'm
Alone,
gonna
just
do.
say big fan, a lot of years. Real question, did you run this by the real life Abby when you had the film finished and before you
Good
started
question.
it? And then the third is the
Good
Dennis
question,
Eckersley
painful
story.
answer.
The Dennis Eckersley story, is that ever making it to a movie?
Dennis Eckersley story is a story that is not going to make it into a movie. That's from an album that I made a few years ago called My Secret Public Journal Live, which I think you can get on iTunes.
I got a whoop. I got a whoop from the lady now. Hello, whoop.
Should I tell that story?
Yeah, tell that story.
Okay.
Then you don't panic. We got you.
How over are we at this point in terms of time? Because the story is,
I mean, if
I think it's okay. So,
Yeah,
so,
tell
the,
us.
so the Dennis Eckersley story, the post of this movie is that I'm a comedian and people ask me to do jobs that are unusual. And one year, someone asked me to perform at the MVP Awards for Major League Baseball. And I'm still not sure why. Like, I literally don't know. Maybe they'd heard about my work as backup right fielder for Economy Paint Supply when I was 11. But anyway, I showed up, and you probably end up at a lot of sort of these unusual type events where you're out of place as a comedian. No. I thought that I was going to be a pre-show or sideshow. It turns out they had me seated on the stage in between Dennis Eckersley, Alex Rodriguez, Roger Clemens, Dontrell Willis, and Josh Beckett. And we have a lot to talk about, you know, we're hashing out our multi-million-dollar contracts and fraternity suits, you know, and no, so they're sort of talking over me, and then the man who's in charge of the event comes up to me and he goes, "We'd like you to tell a few jokes about baseball." And I was like, I don't know if that's such a good idea, because those people are here. So I tried to come up with a few on the fly. As a matter of fact, my brother Joe was there with me as well, and he and I were just kind of going back and forth, like kind of scrawling, like, oh, what do I do? And so I went up and I said, it's exciting to be here because when I was a kid, I went to a baseball card show and I paid $8 for Roger Clemens' autograph, and I'm sitting next to him now, and he tried to charge me $13. And he did not laugh at that at all, but other people did, and so I was like, all right, 1 for 1. And then the event was put on by the Baseball Writers Association. I said, what's interesting about sports writers is they don't know how to play sports, and some of them don't know how to write. And they didn't laugh at that either, but then the other people did. So I was like, all right, I'm 2 for 2. And I told a few more jokes about baseball. I say, thank you. I sit down. And I realized that I have to pee, because in order to build up the gall to insult this roid head pitcher sitting next to me, I drank quite a bit. And so I snuck out behind the other players, and I went and met the other players. The players. That's a terrible choice of words. And then I pee, and then as I'm returning to the room, the recipient of the award ends his speech by saying, some writers may not know how to write, but some comedians don't know how to tell jokes. And I think he was talking about me, because all 1,000 people in the room simultaneously looked up at my empty chair, and I was not there. I was over on the side of the stage, and so I had to make a split-second decision, and I made the wrong decision. I decided to jog back out on stage and wave. And I crossed paths with the baseball writer as I was sitting down, and I went to shake his hand as an act of goodwill, but he just brushed right past me, and I was like, oh man, this is embarrassing. I don't know anybody here. I look over at Clemens. He hates me too. I look over at Eckersley, and he had been actually very nice, and I go, did you see that guy snub me when I tried to shake his hand? And Eckersley goes, yeah, fuck him. All right, talk about another save for the Eck. He's a relief pitcher. I don't know if baseball jokes go over well here, but so here's where it gets bad. The event ends, I'm with my brother Joe, and I said to him, I go, Joe, did you see that guy snub me when I tried to shake his hand? And Joe goes, Mike, didn't you see his speech? He's blind. Oh no. Not only had I insulted the blind guy, I had taunted him by trying to shake his hand. But the real evil one is Eckersley. He knew he was blind and he still said fuck him. That's the Eckersley story. That's not going to be a movie anytime soon, because you need Eckersley to play himself. And I just don't think he has the attitude for a movie star, I'll be honest with you. But, well, that was the first question. What was the second question? The second question was, did I run it by Abby? Oddly, I wrote a multiple actor play version of this that included, before I wrote the one-man show, and it included Abby, and I asked her to play herself in it. And she said no. And then I made this, and then she actually really loved it. She saw it at the premiere in Brooklyn.
Was her name Abby? I've never known why you were called Matt in the movie. I don't get why you're Matt.
Well, because the character's name is Matt Vandemiglio, and yeah, it was a typo we stuck with. You know what it is? It's a lot of people ask that. It's if you look at kind of autobiographical or semi-autobiographical films, and Ira and I spent like an extraordinary amount of time talking about this exact thing. Will it be Mike Birbiglia, or will it be like Matt something, some kind of thing? And we looked at like Howard Stern's Private Parts, which is a movie where he plays himself and he's Howard Stern. And then you look at like Annie Hall and it's Albie Singer, but you kind of know it's Woody Allen. And we thought, well, that's an archetype. Both are good movies and they're good comedies, but I'd like to make a lot of movies. And so I'd like to embark down a path where I can feel free to embellish and I don't feel so married to the truth. I'm not into marriage. I'm not so married to the truth that I feel like in the writing process. I'm like, well, that didn't happen. Although my parents never said that, and my ex-girlfriend didn't say that. That's why it's Abby, that's why it's Matt Vandemiglio, and that's why it's Frank and Linda and all that. But what's odd is that the fact that we changed the names made it much more palatable for my parents, who really don't, how shall I put this? They don't love my shows. They don't come to a lot of them. We have a very good relationship. We spend all of our holidays together. It's very sweet. They don't like that I talk about such personal things on stage. It makes them uncomfortable. And when they saw the movie, they loved it. It was their favorite thing that they've ever seen me do. And it was so meaningful for me, and I said, did you see any similarities between you and the parent characters? And they were like, no, they weren't like us at all. So it worked.
I'm going to see what this guy wants to ask. It's better be good.
My question is about...
Now we have too many microphones.
I was hopping back.
You can keep that, yeah.
He's a ball boy as well, this guy. Is that what they call
I think
them?
we all have a preference. Come on, you have a question.
Yeah. Going back to something that you mentioned about 15 minutes ago, which is about marketing, and you kind of, I was trying to figure out if you were being flippant about the way that you marketed this, like you said, as if Jimmy happened to mention to you, just put it out on social media and get people tweeting about it, and that'll kind of do.
No, I'm serious.
Is this really, you didn't go into this, you had $1 million budget,
Yeah.
so somebody surely behind that wanted a little bit of a marketing plan.
It did well in the States, right?
Yeah. In the States, it did really well. Like for independent film, I think it made like $2.5 million in the box office, which is a lot for a small film. For whatever reason, no UK distributor wanted it. We called.
He's doing okay, he just dresses like that.
The sneakers are really it's a fashion thing. No, it's true. I mean, it really is. It's a struggle with independent films. Unfortunately, there's places like Sundance that support independent films and put up events like this, and people like Jimmy who support things that he likes. This is us right now. Like, this is it. This is our premiere, and if you want people to see the film, tell them.
So you made the movie, entered it into film festivals, Sundance being one of them.
Yeah.
And then...
We submitted to BFI and were rejected. Which other European film festivals? Jacob,
we don't have time to go through all the ones.
It starts scrolling down the screen. Well, we were in Sundance and South by Southwest and Nantucket and BAM and tons of American festivals, the Montreal Festival. But for whatever reason, European festivals. Jacob, anything? We tried Venice, tried Cannes. We tried them all, says Jacob. Yeah, sometimes, I think one of the things with comedy is that, when you guys just watch this in an audience with a group of people, and it's on a big screen, when film festival programmers are watching films, I would say often, I mean, Trevor could speak to this more, but often they're looking on, television screens, small screens, probably alone. I mean, these are lonely people.
But you're right. In comedy, I think more than any other type of movie, it's a shared experience. You laugh when you're in a group. When you watch a comedy DVD at home on your own, you don't laugh that much. But when you're in a group or you come out to see a show, the atmosphere, it does so much. So you want to. I mean, it's on iTunes, but you really want people to come out and see this live, in a movie theater.
Yeah, so it's real. We're going to take the microphone away from you now.
Looks weird.
Let's see how far. Here we have a question over here. Let's see how deep in 7:30. So we should probably wrap up. Like 2 more questions.
There's a lot of pain in the movie. There's a lot of melancholy in the...
Is this a question or are you having...
It
sounds like a cry for help. We have medical... There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of melancholy. Listen, we're going to get to you. We're going to be okay.
No, my question was...
Do you want a hug, man?
And actually, no, I'll throw this to you as well, Jimmy, if I may. There's a lot of melancholy in the movie, which obviously went into the show.
Yes.
And my question is, this was all genuinely in your one-man show, in the live act, but it was something that came into your act in the course of your comedy career. Did that happen with the same kind of catalyst that we saw in the movie? Did somebody come up and say, hey, this should all be in the show? And how much bravery does it then take to start to put that in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's not unlike my journey is not unlike the character's journey. I would say a lot of times people will say, was that Mark Maron in real life, whose character in the film is Mark Mulheron?
Not a long meeting.
Yeah. I should have gotten much bigger laugh. But a long meeting. Referencing the earlier last meeting. No one's perfect. Yeah, it's I would say that it was a combination of people like Mark Maron and Louis C.K. and Doug Stanhope and all these comedians who I really admire, who I would meet or open for in clubs, and I or else it's just kind of pathetic. And so that's sort of how I headed in that direction. And then in terms of the melancholic aspects of it, I mean, I studied playwriting and film writing in college, and so when I wrote the original one-man show, all of that was kind of built into it. And I just come off of this breakup that you just saw when I wrote it, and so I had a lot of melancholy in me.
There was a lot of pain.
There was a lot of pain, but hopefully over the years there's enough jokes that came out of it from the distance. But we'll do one last question. Who has the best question?
That's a lot of pressure. Yeah, I was just wondering about how...
I don't even know where this person is. There's an amplified voice in darkness.
Right in the middle with the bright lights. I was just wondering the difference about US and the international audience and how they respond to the film. Are there jokes that, fall flat here that, rock audiences in America or anything like that? It's a good question, right?
Just we hear another question and
He
then
just
heckled his own question. This guy down here is still confident he's got a better one.
It's on.
Let's get his question.
Let's let the audience vote.
Let's let the audience vote. This guy, the guy with the late stage Freddie Mercury dude. He's got a beard. He looks like something. I don't know.
I'm sure Freddie Mercury would love to hear that, him described as late stage.
That guy, yeah. Let's see.
Who?
The guy with the beard. He was really confident. He was annoying.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
How did you not break any bones? When you jumped out, we're back to the first question. We're going to go back to the first question. Nice try. I mean, thanks for playing, but... And then the first question was... The first question won, and I don't remember what it was.
It's international audiences. Do audiences differ? They're made up of different individuals, yes. You haven't worked together as a group before, right?
This is an odd thing. These people up in the balcony are leaning over in a very precarious way. It makes me feel like they're going to jump any moment.
Well, there was a lot of pain and melancholy.
But yeah, how does international audience? I was just in Australia a few weeks ago, and it played great there. And then we just had this screening just now, and it seemed like you guys liked it. You're still here. I feel like if you didn't like it, you would have left. There's a TGI Fridays, for God's sakes. There's a lot to do over here at the O2. Ben & Jerry's ice cream. There's Mojo noodles.
I'm pretty sure what you just said was racist.
Yeah, I don't think that's the name. There is a noodles place. But yeah, no, it's. I feel like at least what I intended, and I hope that people get is it's a human story. It's intended to, just to be about a guy who suppresses a lot, and I'd like to think that that's human. It's a human comedy, and that's not specific to being American.
Agreed.
Thank you guys very much. I want to thank Jimmy Carr. Thank you guys very much.